Welcome to another episode of Unapologetic Leadership. And I have Jacob Soter here with me, and he's the director of SwimSmart Technologies, LLC. And they revolutionize how your community approaches water safety with rugged, standardized, and turnkey electronic hardware and software solutions trusted by beach authorities nationwide. And basically, they can reduce drownings and save lives, which is huge and not an area that I'm as familiar with because I don't swim as much, even though I just joined mostly for the community aspect of it, but I just joined a Christian surfers group called what is it called? Yeah, I think it's called Christian Surfers. It's a national group, but I'm in the Michigan chapter, which is what it is, which is funny because I took my first swimming lesson or surfing lesson back in October, about 4 months ago, or
Had to
3
be
months
cold.
ago. Yeah, and it turned out it's actually I think a 60 something degree day, and luckily they had wetsuits and footies and caps and all kinds of things. So I mean, literally, it felt like you were in the wintertime, all bundled up, and only just a few pieces of your body were cool. But like I said, it was a 60-degree day, surprisingly. So yeah, it wasn't as cold as I would have thought. And turns out that most of the best surfing in Michigan is during the fall and winter. And some of those
Yeah.
guys even go out on the ice. And I'm like, are you crazy? But now I'm a part of that group. So I get to say I'm crazy. I'm crazy. So welcome, Jacob. I appreciate you being
Thank you.
here. Awesome.
Yeah. I'll just tell you a little bit about my background, unless you wanted to finish your question. But I was just going to say that I am, so I'm in Michigan too, and I'm a Uper, so I live in the Upper Peninsula, and we have like the legendary ice surfers. So a lot of
Ooh.
surfers will go surf up in the UP on Lake Superior and Lake Michigan, and their beards will be full of ice. It's like an
Oh,
icicle beard. So it's a unique. The Great Lakes are a unique feature of our region for sure. So
yes. No, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that because at this point, I can't imagine doing that, but I'm more open to do that since I've never been a swimmer because of the cold water in the summertime. But no, I really appreciate that. So tell me about your background, how you help people. Because to me, like I said, this is very fascinating because I've never met anyone dedicated to the whole safety of swimming, especially with technology, and then the whole focus of this. This does impact communities, and I would imagine since I hear every summer there's news reports of people locally who have passed away or gone missing in lakes or big bodies of water, and it's like these people knew how to swim. So I'm like, what's going on here? So I'm very curious to find out how you help people, and if you enjoy doing that, and what's the spirit of it. Because when we had our first conversation, it was very interesting, and I really enjoyed that. So yeah, let me know what you do and how you help people.
yeah. So actually, I started working on this when I was in college. So I'm a graduate of Michigan Tech. It's a great school, and when I was in college, I was just a young engineering student. And part of graduation, you got to work on applied projects. They want you to build things and get your hands dirty, so to speak. And you can kind of take your own path. Either you can follow the standard route and you're assigned a project, or you can kind of make it your own. And there was this organization at Michigan Tech that was really focused on water applications. Mostly it was Navy applications, but at the time there wasn't really like a solidified Navy project. So we were kind of looking for something to do. And we met a local person at the Keweenaw Bay Indian community, which is an Indian community up near the school. And he was working on working with a water drone that is basically the shape of a life ring. So you can think like a mini jet ski, but it's powered remote control.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, the theory was that you could give this to a police officer, to a firefighter, to a lifeguard, and they could throw it in the water and then drive it out. So that was something that we as young students started working on all those years ago to try to come up with a lower cost, more accessible version of that life ring. So that was kind of like the introduction to my career. I was probably 19 or 20 when I started working on water safety technology. And through that process, I met, at the time, dozens of people around the Great Lakes, and now hundreds or thousands of people around the country that are committed to water safety in various different ways around the country. And The country's a lot different when it comes to water safety. So the Great Lakes is very unique in the challenges and benefits that the Great Lakes gives us in terms of swimming and boating, surfing even, right? It's very unique compared to even the West Coast, Gulf Coast, etc. So part of that process when I was in my undergrad, designing this technology, we went to a conference called the Great Lakes Water Safety Consortium.
Hmm.
So it's a group of all sorts of people. It could be government officials, first responders, it could be families that are interested in water safety that come together on an annual basis to discuss some of the challenges and successes that the Great Lakes regions had in terms of water safety, policy changes, funding, big projects, things like that.
And I was going to
And
say that's really cool, just from all the different perspectives of groups you're saying. So I like that. That's awesome.
yeah, for sure. It is a very diverse group. There's weather scientists, like National Weather Service scientists, to first responders, boots on the ground, to mom and dad that unfortunately maybe lost a family member to drowning. And hearing some of those stories is really what kind of gave me the drive and the inspiration at a young age to want to do something in this space. And there was specifically a presentation on the beach flag system. So we're kind of getting into the weeds, but it's important to understand that in the water safety world, it is behind the times when it comes to technology. So, like you mentioned, water safety, it seems like there's not really a lot of technology development in the water safety space. You think about firefighting safety and police safety, even like complex machines like cars or things like that,
Yes.
all of the safety features we have in our cars nowadays. Well, when it came to water safety, a lot of the country still uses a very antiquated warning system. It's literally a flag on a flagpole, a cloth flag.
Which I've
And
seen those.
yeah. So it's the flag warning system. Somebody's job almost every day is to literally go out to those flagpoles and change them. And they have to change them, rapidly when the conditions change. So, and, if they fall behind, people are reliant on that information. That information is critical. So when you're taking an old logistically challenging situation like updating a flag on a flagpole and combining that with like safety critical information, life and death situations, doesn't always mix well, right? So it's
Yeah.
kind of this weird situation where at that conference they were discussing the challenges of implementing a regional flag system. So Great Lakes wide. The thing with water safety is conveying information to people so that they can understand it, whether it's telling them, educating them how to swim, where to swim, when not to swim, things like that. Well, if we don't have a unified message, it's very difficult to make that effective. So what they were pushing for was uniformity. So really, as young engineers and entrepreneurs, we were sitting there like, well, why don't they just do a electronic version? Like this makes no sense. They're driving all the way out to this beach. It could be 5-10 miles away. Why not just make it connected? And this was about probably 10 years ago now. 2016 so 2017 this conference was. So since then, I've just kept doing it through my undergrad at during my time at the university, and then when I graduated, it was this very weird situation where COVID was just happening. It was 2019. I think it was the fall, coming towards winter, and I was just about to graduate, and I had to make a decision: do I go with my employer that I worked with previously, or do I pave my own path? This thing I've been working on for years.
Yeah.
And, I took the situation for, what it is. A lot of people, there was a lot of uncertainty, jobs were coming and going, and I decided to take my own path. So I haven't looked back since.
That's fantastic. That's really good. And so really it just started, as you said, in mostly in the university. It wasn't necessarily a passion for you at that time.
Yeah, I would say it was building. Really, what stuck with me throughout was the presentations of some of the family members that lost people, because a lot of the presentations you sit down and it's very academic, it's methodical, it's presented in a particular way to convey a message. And when it came to these families sharing their loss, it was very emotional. It was sort of sporadic, right? It wasn't this structured presentation that maybe you're used to. It's kind of like just this burst of raw emotion. So it was actually pretty deep and hard to listen to. And that's something that kind of stuck with me, where it was like, this is deeper than just kind of like solving some basic problem. This is like something that could really change people's lives, and maybe could have made the difference in a life or death situation. It's hard to say, but that's kind of how I took it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and you bring out a great point of emotions. And I know me growing up, I'm in my late 50s, and just growing up, I've been more of the engineering type, a bullet point type on PowerPoints, and have not liked to share my emotions because they've been uncomfortable. I've gotten better at it, but as I've learned with our businesses or even sharing human to human over the last thousands of years, we've shared through stories, and that's how mostly we've taught. And they're memorable, as you said, they impacted you. So tell me a little bit about that. That earlier on, did you see stories being told or shared through, I don't know if you call them impact victims or people like that back in the day, or was it mostly academic like you had mentioned?
I would say, at least from a lot of the stories I heard, it was very story driven,
Okay.
less so academic. There was some academic flavors to it, on addressing specifically the science behind why these phenomena happen that people typically drown in. But a lot of it was people just sharing stories, both good and bad, right? Bad, someone drowned, sharing their story, why it's important to change what's the status quo, and people
Hmm.
sharing success stories, things that they did in their community, implemented at the local level that made a huge difference. So there was a lot of that, more emotion. And when it comes to public safety, I would say in general, a lot of it is a hard topic to talk about, because there are people either losing their lives, or there's some sort of victimality that where something happens. So
Yeah.
it's not always an easy conversation to have.
Yeah. No, I definitely can appreciate that. And when it comes to, helping people, did you say you were helping people all over the country, or is it the world, or how far is your reach at this point?
Well, technically, hopefully this summer we will be worldwide, which will be Canada.
Okay.
So I just leave it at worldwide. But
Okay.
technically, we are around the country today. We're on the East Coast, the Gulf Coast, all over the Great Lakes. So we do have a presence around the country, but I'm really excited to have our first Canadian beach joining us this summer as well. So, and the technology we create, there is no technology silver bullet. The technology
Yeah.
isn't going to stop drowning by any means, but there's so many different ways that it can complement or support or force multiply what people are already doing today to keep people safe, that it really does make an impact. I mean, in some cases it makes a huge difference. Just
Mm.
a simple thing like a light versus the flag, it seems simple, but it makes a huge impact. Now they don't have to drive out to that flag, it changes instantaneously, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I like the 2 points that stood out there for me. One is just that technology is not gonna solve every problem, and also simplicity, keeping things simple may be all you need to make would be a huge leverage point to create some big impact from the flag to the light in that example. So I think that's awesome, because when I talk about leadership principles, when I coach or keynote speak, philosophy and decluttering many times can be some of the best ways to get a clear space, both in our minds and our physical space, to come up with some amazing solutions that seem like, why didn't I think of that before? Why didn't I think of that
Hmm.
before? Yeah.
Yeah.
So when it comes to you designing, developing, are you mostly working with people, or are you like engineering and designing things?
A little bit of both. I definitely work
Okay.
with a lot of people pretty much every day, and every region is unique. So we come to the local stakeholders there, the people that are managing that beach safety program, and we just try to make them better, right?
Okay.
So we're not there to necessarily replace what's there. We're there to take the program they have today and enhance it. That's where we find the most success, is really just, again, that force multiplication, making one person effective as two or three, ideally.
Yeah. No, that's great. And one of my questions that I had for you that kind of ties right into this is, when it comes to communicating with other people in these relationships or at beaches or municipalities or families, what's one of the the biggest challenges that maybe you've come across where you've had to keep your values straight in terms of what your purpose or focus is. But yeah, what's one of the biggest challenges you've come across, and how did you stay aligned with your focus?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest challenges coming into a new space is kind of having that humility to sort of listen first and then ask questions. What I've learned is that going into a new space, you don't even really understand level one, right? When we enter a new region, like we work in the Gulf for the East Coast, the world is a very complex place, and everybody's different. Every region has their own particular problems. So really the most important thing is kind of just to listen to what they have to say, ask good questions, and just sort of let them speak before you speak. And by doing so, you can craft much better solutions and trying to help
Mm.
solve some of their problems rather than like just sort of forcing a solution that works in one spot that you think will work in the other. Sometimes that is successful. You say, hey, it worked really well here. Look what, our friends in this spot are doing. Would this help you? But a lot of the time, I learned that some of the biggest mistakes I've made in trying to work with, some of these other regions is assuming I have all the information and going into it saying, I have the solution. Here's the solution. This is what will help you.
Okay.
Really, it's about kind of talking with them, learning what sort of problems they have and, letting them sort of guide rather than trying to be the solution to everything. And I think that kind of blends into leadership just as a macro,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's really about kind of like listening to whether you're working with potential clients or even your team, just sort of listening to what they're saying, taking that and then using that to make the best path forward, to make that part of your solution rather than just saying, this is the path forward. I know the path to everything. Definitely. That was a big learning experience, going into regions thinking I had all the answers and it turns out I wasted a bunch of time and I did not. So
Yeah, and that's the key too. I think we've all said it in that way that, oh, we wasted a bunch of time. No, that was a great learning experience when you actually got into the field, and I know you realize that now. So it's always very interesting when we beat our heads up against a wall, and then we realize, oh, number one, this is a collaborative space, and people are going to be more receptive if we're asking questions and respect them, and all of these other people skills and having empathy. But listening is a big one that I've talked about, and I had a previous podcast guest right before this one said the same thing. Talk or say less statements, ask more questions, and that way, too, it educates and informs the process, just like you said. And now we've got two heads that are better than one with that analogy or with that metaphor. So I
and
think that's awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
what I would say about, so you mentioned collaboration. I think that kind of gets at like the root of it, right? Like once you sort of create a collaborative environment, and you can do that as a team, or you can do that with like when we work with the municipality. If you
Mm-hmm.
can make, if there are people that are engaged, it doesn't matter who they are. Like sometimes we work with like a lone park ranger that is just wants this thing fixed. We pull them in into a collaborative environment to help solve that problem. And then it's the real things that the challenges that they are faced with on a daily basis. You're hearing them, you're trying to help them. That is what will get something done, right? So I think that's definitely true. The collaborative nature of some of the partnerships we have, I think, is probably the more valuable than the end result itself, right? It's building those relationships, having people trust each other, and say, even if, let's say, we pilot a project with a new community, even if something goes wrong, they trust you enough to make it right. They know you've been through the trenches with me. You've heard the problems I've had. We trust you to make this right. Those are some of the best, relationships we've had for sure.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And just the whole idea of there's a few things you said, so let me see if I can get this clear. The one thing I was thinking of is that boots on the ground or first line people who are communicating or dealing with whether it's customer base, because I've seen this in organizations, whether like you said, you have a large organization or you have one or two people, that many times the person at the top making all the decisions is not listening or being informed by the person who is handling the day to day, just as you said, and knows some of the
Mhm.
nuances and things that are happening with people. So I really appreciate you talking about that, including developing trust. And I think in this day and age, with all the technology and AI and all the wonderful things we can do, if we are not being humans and still showing respect, that it's difficult to communicate and have someone else receive that if we don't come in with the right attitude and maybe some tactical steps on how to approach people in a kind and respectful way. So,
Mhm.
have you ever had any times where people have really fought back against what you were teaching or educating them about, and it seemed like
Oh
just a
yeah.
brick wall? Okay.
Yeah, especially, working with government partners, like I can tell you, we just had a call today with one of our partners in North Carolina, and we were talking about you can't make everybody happy. So unfortunately, we just sort of use that as the basis of, but I do think that, again, collaboration and, when you work with government, which is unique from like maybe B2B or B2C, when you're selling to government or working with government, the community is a stakeholder. It's not just necessarily the municipalities, the people that live there, the people that vacation there. So taking that into consideration as well when coming up with the solution is another big thing I learned over time. It's like, okay, I thought I have it figured out. I'm working with the person. Let's get the solution. But then we've had situations where we had pushback from members in the community. And, I take all feedback into consideration. So I take that stuff seriously. I want to make it better. I want to make people feel like it's the right solution for their community. So, that was an interesting thing I've learned. And you really can't learn it until you start doing this sort of thing, working in sort of the public safety space. Is you could implement something and it could produce good and it could save people's lives, but every positive force, I guess no good deed can go unpunished. Like you think you're doing something good and it
Yep.
turns out, if you look at it from someone else's perspective, it's actually bad. And it doesn't mean they're malicious. It's just that you're not looking at it from their perspective. So until you kind of like, until the rubber hits the road, so to speak, you could be sitting in your room planning all day, trying to think through every use case or everybody's perspective. It's just not possible till you
Right.
actually start doing. So, yeah, certainly we've had some criticisms, we've had some failures for sure, but I think the big thing is having the humility to like say, okay, I don't know everything. I definitely got things wrong. I want to understand what we did wrong and I want to not make that mistake again. Right? Whether or
Yeah.
not we can completely change the situation, but as long as I acknowledge that we did something wrong and we're going to try our best to do better in the
Yeah.
future, I think that's important. And sometimes there's things that are inevitable. The reality is, things happen in life that are tragic. Even with the implementations that we do to make beaches
Mm,
safer, people still drowned. Right? There's loss of life,
right.
but it's really those victories. It's the people that are supporting us. That's what gives us the confidence to keep going. So.
I like that. Yeah, that's really good. And focusing on those victories and having that vision, the purpose, and conviction that helps you to move forward rather than just taking losses and focusing on only those. It's like what can we
Mhm,
glean? What can we learn from those losses or
mhm.
defeats or temporary defeats? And how can we move forward more intelligently? So that's great. How has your inner conviction? I don't know if you're able to share anything about your personal life or anything else where your inner conviction has played a role in how you've handled either fear or some of these tough decisions you faced either personally or professionally.
Yeah, so we talked about this actually one on one earlier. Is that when I was younger, before college, I went through some tough times. I struggled with addiction throughout my life. Luckily, I'm past that now. I don't really
Awesome.
talk about it with a lot of people. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't talk about it with a lot of people, but it's one of those things where with really dark, deep struggles comes a resilience you build if you get through it. Hopefully, you can get through it, but you learn so much about yourself and about like real struggle versus sort of some of more of this I guess performative things. Things happen bad in people's lives all the time, but
Yeah.
when you really take a step back and analyze, it's like, this isn't that bad in the grand scheme of things. There are real personal, deep down struggles that people are going through that are hard to get through. So it's stuff like that that's really shaped me. So when
Hmm.
something goes, sometimes crisis mode with the business or something goes wrong with the team, it's kind of like, all right, well, this is just another day, right? I'm healthy. I'm moving on. I'm in a great place. We're going to get through this. Like, yeah, things seem crazy right now, but it's just another day. And I think, we've had that with the business too. We've had some crisis situations where it was looking bleak and we were like, are we going to keep going? But getting through that and learning from that is like when the next battle comes, it's like we're just so much more ready for it. We've built so much more of tools and skill sets to deal with problems that when the next one comes, it's just like, I've been here before. This really isn't that big of a deal. And I know I can get through it. I mean, at the end of the day, there's hard decisions that have to be made.
Yeah.
And there's new situations that come. Like I just had one this year that was challenging, but I've gotten through it and I've learned along the way. And again, trying to build up that humility a little more and understand that I'm still learning. And I think I'm going to probably still be learning for a long time. And accepting the fact that, I don't have all the answers.
Yeah, I think that's good. You mentioned several things there about resilience, about persistence, determination, and really not giving up too soon. Because many times, if we give up on a pursuit, we're missing all those opportunities to improve our skill sets and our learnings. And all of a sudden, we're starting off something new. But with
Mm-hmm.
your examples and stories of your personal life and also in business, you're talking about the whole idea of, wow, I've seen this pattern before. I can recognize it now. And now I can make a different choice in the matter, which can change your life or business pretty dramatically. So I think that's pretty impressive, because one of the biggest things nowadays I see is a lot of people getting educated on TikTok and YouTube, and you tend to see all these grand schemes of, oh yeah, make $1 million next month, or do this or do that,
Yep.
all this stuff, but they don't talk about what work it takes, what effort,
Yeah.
and as you say, resilience, and having empathy, and even empathy with yourself, being
Yeah.
kind to
Well,
yourself. Yeah.
I can say for, anyone who's an entrepreneur being through sort of the ecosystem, growing it from a university startup to where I am today, it took 10 years. So it takes a long time to build anything of value. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs that some of them got lucky. They're very hardworking and successful. Some got faster than others, but it
Yeah.
still takes years. It takes years of determination and like you said, never giving up, because it's not an easy path. And it's not just entrepreneurship, but most things in life, situations happen that become very difficult. And if you give up and just sort of walk away, then you're never going to see the fruit, of the success 5, 10 years down the line. It takes a long time to actually see that in reality. But honestly, when I think about it, it's the path that I've been taking doing this is kind of the exciting thing. If I just skipped right to the finish line, would it be nice to, have, be successful and have money and all that? Yeah, of course. But to just skip everything, would that really be that much better,
Yeah.
versus going
Yeah.
through this and having the life experience and building these personal skills? That I think that's the journey. That's the fun part.
Yeah, I think that's great. And as you said, the journey, and as I've heard many times over the last 30, 40 years of my personal development journey, just the whole idea that success is not a destination, it's the journey. And when I was in
Mm-hmm.
my 20s and 30s, I'm like, what does that even mean? I don't want that. I just want success. But like you said, with the qualities you develop, and I've had to learn this over the last several years of just slowing down, being
Mm-hmm.
present in the moment instead of being a million miles away in my head all the time and never appreciating that journey. My life and each moment is so much more full, so much more enjoyable, especially with the impact I create for other people and leaders and family. And I've also taught Bible study school for the last 30 plus years too in church. But just creating that seed that's a benefit that you can't always see right away. But when we, as I said, give grace to ourselves, give ourselves empathy, and allow that for other people, some humility, as you've said multiple times, that
Mm-hmm.
that can that can help a lot. because as we're not perfect, we shouldn't expect others to be when they make mistakes, and we appreciate that same appreciation back. And one of the other areas too you talked about throughout the whole process, not just banking on not banking on, but not focusing on the challenges, but figuring out what you're grateful for and putting things in perspective with the challenges that you have. But once again, if you quit too soon, it's hard to compare what challenges are what, and all you know is that one thing that you quit and never pursued.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciate. I mean, there's so many things that you've shared here. How have you? Let me see. Do you have a bold move that you can remember where you felt unqualified or unsure, and what did you learn from that? A bold move.
Well, a bold move I felt unqualified for. Honestly, starting a business, you feel unqualified for everything. You kind of learn everything on your own, and you can, when you're starting a business, you can look for help. And honestly, some of my support, like my ecosystem, my mentors, my family, they're the ones that have supported me through kind of the uncertainty. Because again, there's times where it's not easy. Things are tough,
Mhm.
and when you're a business owner, it reflects into your personal life too. So that
Thank you for saying
separation of
that.
sort of, yeah, that separation of work and life is very difficult when it's kind of your brainchild, so to speak. But being able to disconnect, having family and support mechanisms outside of work, but also part of work, can help you just sort of like look at it from another perspective, right? Where you're not like you're not doom scrolling through your email, like, oh my gosh, everything's, done for. You kind of take a step back and you talk to family, you talk to friends, and just get a perspective where it's like, this is the right move. This is what needs to happen for the business or for my team, and this is what I have to do. And then you come back
Yep.
after hopefully a good, refreshing weekend, and then you're embracing the change, right? And
Awesome.
I think that's a big thing. Is with everything with change, it seems like it's impossible, or it's like so scary before you
Hmm.
do it. But by the time you're done with it, it was like, this was inevitable. Of course I was going to do this, So it's like, it's one of those things where change is tough, but by the time you're done with it, it's the right move and it. So,
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And one of the concepts that came up for me as you're talking about that is the whole idea that there's two sides to every coin. There's many times the activity piece, but also to the rest side. And if there's a front,
mhm,
there's got to be a back. If there's a right, there's got to be a left. So I appreciate that
yeah.
balance of you mentioning both in the business side of things, there are relationships and there's got to be a balance. And also too in
Mhm.
our personal lives, which I feel that's usually where people are driven by how can they make their personal lives and the people in their lives more enhanced or in a better situation. So I think that's great that you mentioned that, and especially a business owner, like you said, you end up feeling unqualified for everything,
Yeah.
and until
Yep.
new challenges come up, and then but once again, if you have that framework as you've developed throughout your
Mhm.
life of okay, I've been in challenges before, how do I operate through that?
Mhm.
What's one way that you, as we're closing down here with this episode, what are some just brief tips you might give when you do come up against challenges? Is that something that you feel is more unconscious and you just naturally do it now, or is it something you still slow down and think about, or do you have any tips for the
Yeah.
person listening?
Well, one thing that I feel like has carried me well throughout my life is kind of being able to not immediately react to something. Like, I'm not perfect and I definitely react to things at times, but I've found it very valuable to be able to kind of, and it may seem weird, like if you're in a situation where they're expecting an answer, sometimes you got to be able to just take a step back, leave the room, don't answer the email, don't answer the call, tell them you'll call them later, and take time to reflect on it, because usually it's those high pressure situations that can really change the dynamics of a situation. If you react poorly to something, it may ruin a relationship, it may lose a sale, it may lose an employee. It's kind of more reflecting on something and taking the necessary time to figure out what actually is the best move. How do I feel about this? What is best for the team? What is best for the business? rather than just, knee-jerk reacting to it on a one-to-one level.
Yeah.
I feel like that, but at the same time, it's a double-edged sword. It's helped me in a lot of ways, but at the same time, it slows things down. Sometimes you got to be able to make split-second decisions. But I always find that if I have time to think it through, I feel better with the answer, right? I feel better with the result. I feel better with the decision than I would if I just immediately reacted and made a decision off the bat. So I guess that's one of the things that's really helped me.
Yeah, I think that's great. And even you mentioned the idea that you have to step away sometimes and then communicate that with people. Say, hey, I'd love to give you an answer now, but let me think about this so I'm a little more thorough and reasonable. And I can also imagine that during safety things, like you said, it can mess up a business sale or something else or a relationship. But in some of the water safety things that you're taking up, making a quick decision is it could ruin a lot of people's lives, and not just the person. Yeah.
And there's been times where we've turned down opportunities. We've said no to opportunities because we just thought, like you mentioned, it is a life and death situation. So it's so much deeper than any one sale that it's like, if I don't feel that this will actually make the community safer, if I don't truly believe that, then if something happens, I couldn't live with myself if that happened, because it is tough. In our line of work, there are phone calls we get where people die on our beaches, and there are phone calls where we hear people were rescued on our beaches as a result of what we do. So that really is, it's a deep thing that really, again, taking time to think through, am I just trying to, get the easy solution, or is this actually the best thing for, the best outcome?
Right.
So I think maybe it's part of what we do as a business and what I'm passionate about that made me the way I am in terms of problem solving.
Yeah. I think it all comes together. All comes together to make you who
Yeah.
you are, which is great.
Yep.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time, Jacob. And I want to let the audience know who or how you can be reached. What's the best way to reach you?
Sure. Well, my only primary social media is LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Jacob Soter. Other than that, you can find us on our website at swimsmarttech.com, SwimSmart Tech. You can see all about the solutions we make for communities around the country and how we can make beaches safer. And if you have any questions or would like to learn more, don't hesitate to reach out. So thank you for your time.
Awesome. And real quick, if you could, Jacob, spell your last name.
Yes, Soter, Soter. So I've been called Sorter many times. It's Soter. So
Yeah.
sorry, I got used to it. It's one of those things. So,
Yeah. No, thank you so much. And I appreciate that.
yeah.
Well, thank you very much for listening to this episode of Unapologetic Leadership. And remember to stay humble, have humility, to be a better listener than we are a speaker, and to remember that resilience is developed over time and it's not an overnight thing. Thank you again.